Joining us from London is Nora Lee Knudsen, who is a Republican commentator. Thank you for being here with us on Q News. So President Trump launched what many call a very daring strike on Iran's nuclear infrastructure. What do you think? Was this a demonstration of huge strength, or are there quite a few risks behind everything here?
Well, Mark, thank you for having me. It's been a historic week, to say the least. As you know, people were a bit divided at first on whether or not they wanted Trump to get involved with Iran, aside from very diplomatic, peaceful negotiations. And the deception that was put in place, I think, worked really well for them to be targeted and to strike when they weren't expecting it. And despite the amount of damage that was done, and a lot of people are throwing into question the amount of damage, I think it's actually very beneficial. Even people who were divided on whether or not the US should get involved are thankful, because what we've seen that's come out of this, Mark, is that one, in Europe, they realize that the US will stand by its allies. Now in Europe, they're going to pay 5% into defense, which then shows strength in the negotiations that Trump and Europe are trying to have with Putin to end the war with the Ukraine. In regards to the Middle East, it was a risky gamble, that I do think, but it looks like it's paid off, because what's happened here is Israel gets the win that it wanted of minimizing the threat from Iran. I think a lot of the Middle Eastern countries as well that felt threatened by Iran are happy that they went in and minimized that threat and showed that they will be strong if they're not playing along. And now what Trump's trying to do is use his leverage, having stood by the side of Benjamin Netanyahu and helping him to now look a little bit more like a hero than before the strikes, when his government was maybe going to be dissolved and he was on trial for corruption. And in fact, the UN, of course, keeps coming out for a ceasefire. Now he can push a ceasefire between Gaza, between Palestine, between Israel, and perhaps the two-state solution, which I think would be a massive win. Mark, we've seen what he's done between Pakistan and India in terms of helping to negotiate peace there between two nuclear powers. We've seen what he's done with the DRC and Rwanda negotiating peace there. And while everybody loves to be critical of Donald Trump, he has had the courage to address big issues head on. And I think he's garnered a lot of respect from that. We even heard Mark Root refer to him as daddy. And I believe there's a reason. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Mark?
Yeah, well, that was probably was one of the most cringeworthy moments of the week when Mark Rutte called Trump daddy. But you know, it was entertaining, if nothing else. So, is this Trump's peace through strength doctrine? Isn't that sort of bombing people into submission? Is that what that is?
I think it is peace through strength. It was targeted. The US's involvement was only on the nuclear facilities, not individuals. So it was very targeted. And if we saw Iran's response, Iran notified the US before attacking targets. And it was very civil, I must say, the way the response occurred. Yes, there was a bit of a mishap with the ceasefire where, you know, a stray missile from Iran was going to Israel and Israel responded. As we all know, Trump had that moment where he was absolutely furious and used strong language. But there's a bit of truth in what he said, is sometimes people are fighting so long they don't even know why they're fighting. And the comment he made to Mark Root about sometimes you need to let the kids just fight it out for 2 or 3 minutes and then it's easier to get peace.
He'd also said the same, I think, a week before about Russia and Ukraine. Let the kids fight a little bit, and then we'll deal with it at a later stage. It was good to see him being so angry and furious on the White House lawn when he did use choice language there. And to see him criticize Israel, which before that moment he really had backed off from doing.
Right. Look, Trump is a very transparent president. I think we have one of the most, transparent presidencies that we've had in a very long time. He says what he's going to do. He does it, except, of course, for these covert operations with Iran. But he's on point. His mission was peace. That was key to his platform. As we know, he wants the Nobel Peace Prize. He's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize as well. And he wants safe borders. He wants to deal with our illegal immigration problem, and he wants to bring back key manufacturing to the US, and he wants to see Europe pay its fair share for defense. And, tariffs, we were the lowest for tariffs for a very long time, under 3%, and he's addressing that head on as well. Everything he said he's going to do, he's been doing it, and he's done it quickly. People can criticize him, but they can't criticize him for saying he's going to do something and going in and do that. And for that, he garners a lot of respect.
And another thing that Trump was furious about this week were suggestions that perhaps the strikes on the nuclear facilities didn't do as much damage as had been thought. Of course, he came out just a few minutes even after the strikes had taken place and said that the nuclear sites had been completely obliterated. Was that wise when, of course, at that moment, he couldn't really have known what the damage was?
Look, I think it's wise because morale, perception, the mind is always key and crucial. As we know, Churchill did the same thing during World War II. I think UK was losing, all the press was saying we were winning, but that is very important to help with the momentum going forward. There has been significant damage done, whether or not they rebuild the capabilities, whether or not Iran actually wants to get a nuclear weapon or not remains to be seen. But he has sent a strong message to the world, to China, to Russia, to North Korea, to all of our allies. And I think for that, it is crystal clear.
And do you think when it comes to the ceasefire, obviously he personally intervened and pushed both Israel and Iran towards this ceasefire. Do you think that he bounced them into it? Do you think he just announced that and then really dared them to go against him?
That's a good question. I think a ceasefire and peace was always the intention. I think his heart is always in the right place. He wants peace. He wants people to do deals, prosper, make money, let your countries prosper. I think he did want a ceasefire as quickly as possible. Many people were worried when he came out the day after suggesting make Iran great again, because nobody wanted a 2003 Iraq war. Nobody wants boots on the ground. And there was a huge sigh of relief that that's not the case. It was in, out, ceasefire. And then now let's see the leverage that he has and how he can get Netanyahu to agree to real, enduring, lasting peace for the Palestinian people and for Israelis, and to truly transform the future of the Middle East, and then help to normalize relationships among Middle Eastern countries and Israel, which is what Israel would like.
And do you think there's been much discussion about whether this whole endeavor was more about helping Israel to achieve its objectives than it is serving U.S. interests? What would be your take on that?
I think that's a very good question. I think it serves multiple purposes. As I said, I believe Benjamin Netanyahu was in a very bad spot. Clearly, the horrors of the war with Gaza continue. And, Trump has even said himself, many times he wants to see the suffering and the starvation. He wants to see it end. He'd like to see that done and over with. But this was a distraction. I think got Benjamin Netanyahu to look more like a hero within his country and for the Middle East, dealing with the Iran threat. Trump, he serves the multifold purpose of one, getting leverage on Israel to be able to get a ceasefire negotiated, two, sending the message to the world that the US is strong and the US will not mess about. And clearly, they were having peaceful negotiations with Iran. The 60 days had passed. So Trump clearly thought it was within his rights to be able to attack since they weren't being serious about negotiating. And it sends a strong message to Russia about let's come to the table and let's get a peace deal in place. So I think there are multiple purposes, and I am positive that this is actually going to be helpful for everybody in the long run.